In this lecture, we're going to do two interesting things. First, we will loop over an array backwards, and then second, we will also create a loop inside another loop. So let's have some more fun with arrays now. And so let's get back our array again here. So the Jonas array, and let's forget about this element here. And so now, as I said in the beginning of this video, let's now loop over this array backwards. So the first element that we want to print is this one, then this, and finally Jonas. So essentially, in the last lecture, we looped from the beginning. So we started with index 0, then 1, all the way to 4, right? But now we want to start at 4. Then we want to go to 3 and all the way to 0, which is going to be the last index. So this one is 4 and this one is 0. And so now we need to create the for loop according to this new information. So basically according to this new methodology. So let's start again with the counter, and we'll name it I again. But now what should be the initial value of the counter? And we already replied to that question kind of. So it should be 4. But should we just write the 4 here? No, we shouldn't, right? Because we already learned that hard-coded values like this are not a good idea. So what is 4? Well, 4 is basically just the length of the array, which is 5 minus 1. So that's exactly what we will write here. Jonas.length minus 1. Then the condition. And when do we want the loop to stop? Well, it should stop after the 0. And so the condition we need to write, remember, is telling JavaScript in which condition the loop should keep running. And so basically the loop should keep running as long as the counter is still above 0. So I should be greater or equal, actually, 0. So let's quickly simulate that. So at number 4, which is in the beginning, I is greater or equal 0, right? So this condition will be true. And so the next iteration will run. Then we need to decrease the index or the counter. And so let's actually do that as well. And so instead of using I++, which we used before to increment the value, we use minus minus to decrement or to decrease the value by 1. And so now we move from 4 to 3. And 3, of course, still is greater or equal 0. Then all the way to 0. And so 0 is still greater or equal 0. Then the counter gets updated again, and it will be updated to minus 1. And now minus 1 is not greater or equal 0. So this is false, and so the loop will stop. Okay, so I hope that this was not hard. Really, all we have to do is to think when we create these 3 parts here of the for loop. And I hope that you could follow my train of thought here. Now anyway, the rest, of course, is going to work just exactly the same. So we're getting, again, the current element. So let's check that very quickly. And yes, great job, it works. And just to really show it, let's also log the counter variable itself. So first the I, so the counter, and then the array value. And so indeed, this works just as we intended. We start with number 4, just as we have it here. And then we move to 3, 2, 1, 0. And if we now edit one element, then for sure, this is going to work just the same. Because now Jonas length is 6 and minus 1 is 5. And so it will start here at true. And indeed, it does. All right. Now you will probably not be doing this all the time in your own code, but I thought that this was a nice exercise so we could again think about how to define the counter, the condition, and the counter update. Okay, so that was the first part of this lecture. And now I want to show you how we can create a loop inside of a loop. So does that sound crazy? Well, it's not so crazy. And it's not so difficult either. And to do this, let's go back to our gym example from the first loop lecture. So there we had 10 repetitions for a certain weightlifting exercise. Remember? But now let's say that we have 3 different exercises and we want to repeat each of them 5 times. So that means a total of 15 repetitions, 5 for each of the 3 exercises. So to log all these exercises, we will need a loop inside a loop. So let's roll up our sleeves and get to work here. And we're going to start with the 3 exercises. So let's create a counter, and I will actually call it exercise. So exercise, and we start at 1 now this time again, because we simply want to log exercise 1, 2, and 3. So our condition here is that the exercise should be less or equal 3. And actually this would be exactly the same as writing exercise below 4. So you can do whatever you prefer most. And I think I will actually stick with this one this time. And then we need to increase the exercise after each iteration as always. So now let's log to the console something like this. Starting exercise. And actually here we want to include the exercise number. So let's instead create a template literal. And so here we use that counter variable. So let's just check this one. So we have 3 exercises, but we don't have any repetitions yet in there. And so now, again, we need to create a loop inside a loop so that in each exercise, we can have the 5 repetitions that we want. And the repetitions themselves are a loop, right? And so that's why we now need that loop inside of this loop. So let's do that. And this is going to be basically the same as we did earlier. So let's again call it rep, start at 1, and then the condition. So remember how I said that we want 5 repetitions this time. And so let's say we want to stay below 6. So again, that would be exactly the same as writing less or equal 5. But let's keep it a bit different this time and say below 6. And then rep plus plus. And now lifting weights, repetition. And again, I forgot to make this a template literal. So yes, this should work much better. And now this cute emoji here again. Oh, where is it? And let's test this now. So what do you expect to see? Think about that before you load your own result or before I load here the result. So, is this what you expected? Let's even increase this here a little bit. And now we see the full picture. All right, so we start exercise number 1, which is what we have here. And then inside of this iteration of exercise 1, a new loop is created and executed. And so that's what then creates this lifting weights repetition from 1 to 5. All right. Then this loop here is finished, right? So it run all the 5 times, and then this first iteration is finished. And so the exercise loop, so this outer loop here, goes to its second iteration. And so we are at exercise number 2. And then this whole loop here will run again from 1 to 5. So that's these 5 here. And then that loop again finishes, and then the exercise iteration finishes, and we go to iteration number 3. So exercise is now number 3, and then the whole repetition loop, so this inner loop here, will run 5 times again. And with that, we end up with a total of basically 15 repetitions, just as I said in the beginning. So 3 times 5. Okay, and we could even include the number of the current exercise in this string that we're printing here. So let's do that as well. Exercise, and then exercise. So this is the variable that we get from the outer loop. And so this variable here is of course available inside this whole loop. And that does include all the inner code, even this inner loop. And so that's why we can access this variable here as well. And so now we should see exercise 1 printed for these 5, then exercise 2 printed for these 5, and exercise 3 for the last ones. And yeah, beautiful. All right. I think this was a very fun exercise. And again, even though you might not use this all the time in the real world, I still think that this was a pretty cool example to show you some more power of loops. And now to wrap up this section, all there is left to learn is another type of loop, which is the while loop.